Kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Victoria Kelly, tōku ingoa. I'm delighted to welcome you here tonight for our second in our series of seminars that are running alongside SongHubs Sphere. It's very hard to compete with David Bowie. No, I didn't. I wouldn't dare. We have been having a really extraordinary week where we have gathered these extraordinary female-identifying artists, creators, producers, sound engineers, professionals, inspiring creatures to come and share their knowledge, their skills and their inspiration with us. There are a group of people, we're all ensconced at Roundhead Studios in Auckland, and music is being created and conversations are being had, and we're thinking about the strange inequality in our music industry, which doesn't seem really to be commensurate with the level of talent that is spread across the entire gender spectrum. And so I guess what we're trying to do is create a space in honour of Suffrage 125, the moment where New Zealand became the first country in the world to give women the right to vote, to create a space that maybe positively addresses that imbalance by creating a majority where there has traditionally been a minority, and seeing what happens when people come together and find themselves in a space where they are no longer outnumbered, and what that sounds like and what it feels like. So I think I can speak for all of us when I say that it's been extraordinary and emotional and illuminating and revealing. And we now have these three amazing people here on stage. We have Chelsea Jade, who is such a commensurate and subtle and incisive pop composer and poet and writer. And then we've got Laura Bettinson, who's kind of the depth of her beats and the texture of her music is so extraordinary. And then we've got Wendy Wang, who's got this incredible restrained and yet abundant sensibility. And I've been hearing all of this music evolving from all of these rooms and all of these people and just been so inspired and astonished by it. And now we get this chance to listen to these women talk about how they create, what their experiences of creating are, their experiences of collaborating, and their experiences of simply trying to be human beings and have creative identities in rooms with other people who also have creative identities, and how you balance all of those interests in a way that doesn't compete, that allows you to have a voice and allows that voice to be heard alongside all the other voices. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to Chelsea now, and the three of these extraordinary people are going to talk about music and how they make it, and I'm sure that we'll all learn an enormous amount. Chelsea.
Thanks, Victoria. I thought she was going to say I was a comedian. So, no, just kidding. I have no material prepared. But I think, so the thing I'd like to start off by saying is that the way that I've come across the both of you is quite rare in this current climate of knowing everything about everybody. Like the way that I came upon the both of you were both like organic and kind of natural and professional. Like the way that I really came across you, Wendy, was because we had both worked with the same artist in Los Angeles, and she had crowed about how great you were, which is pretty sick. That's like, you know, natural networking when you're in a profession. You find out about people, which is pretty cool. And where I'm going with this is now I'd like you to pulverize me with the litany of achievements you have. Like what is your origin story, and like how did you come to be in music, and where are you from, and just let's make this unnatural.
Okay. Right, I'll try to make this as linear as possible. Well, I started playing piano at 4. I think most Asian children do that. Am I wrong? Yeah. But my older sisters played, and I really wanted to learn. And I sang in church from an early age, and was so the older kids would let me sing with them if I learned the harmony parts. So I was like, yeah, I'll do the hard part. I'll like put in the extra work, you know. So that's kind of how I got into understanding like chords and harmony. And then I learned clarinet in school band because my friends were they chose clarinet, and I wanted to hang out with them. And then in 7th grade, I'm going through the whole thing. Yeah.
I'm like actually writing your Wikipedia page in my pocket. So.
Yeah. It was a speech to text, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And then in junior high, we had a Swiss exchange student, and he had a friend who had like 10 guitars because he was like a child actor, and he could like afford a bunch of guitars. And
name names.
Gosh, what was his name? Scott White.
Okay.
I don't know. And then. So I said, hey, can I play your guitar when you're not using it? And he's like, yeah, of course. And that's when I knew I was obsessed with music, because nobody had to ask me to practice. Nobody, any free time I had, I was practicing. So that was kind of my thing with when I knew that I like loved it. I got a 4-track. I started recording at home, and then I got an 8-track and was recording at home and recording bands and my own bands. And then, I'll just jump ahead because I started too early. But after college, I studied something completely different in college. But in that time, I was in LA, and I was interning with a producer, learned Pro Tools, and was editing drums. And I got asked to compose for this TV show because they needed like a ton of music for that. So that's when I signed up for ASCAP, which is like the U.S. equivalent of APRA, I've heard. And then, so I started working in like TV and film like shortly after college, and then I started going on tours with different bands and learning how hard it is to be an artist, and that I didn't have the personality to make that. And so I just recorded as much as I could, worked at a recording studio.
Whereabouts were you working? Like, what city? Like, you've ended up in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, so I'm like born and raised in Los Angeles, and then the studio was the first one was in West Hollywood, the second one was in Mar Vista, which is near Santa Monica, and then now I'm based in Los Feliz.
And what's your kind of like day-to-day?
Day-to-day, okay. So about a year ago, I signed to a joint venture with Sony ATV with my musical mentor, Greg Kirsten, who I'd met through touring. And he and his wife are kind of like sculpting me into a pop producer and songwriter. So every day I either meet with, 2 topliners, or a topliner and an artist, and we make a song for Pitch, which is just creating a song that an artist might want to include on their album or a record or put out as a single. Otherwise, with an artist, you just kind of figure out what direction they're going in and how you can facilitate their vision. So that's my...
perfect.
Okay, cool.
Perfect. And Laura, I met because when Ebony was just an email address, she sent me to a writing camp in Paris, and which is where I met Laura. And Laura was running, basically the writing camp was similar to what we're doing this week, but it was a hotel, and everyone's rooms were writing rooms, and there was a producer in every room. And I ended up working with Laura, and she was just such a perfect person to work with, because her manner is so calm, but her ideas are zingers. So now take us through your...
Hello. Okay, my story. I've always sung. That is kind of primarily what I guess my first instrument would be. Vocals, but I started writing songs around 16. I moved to London to study, and I moved there as a kind of a singer-songwriter with piano. Quickly figured out that you can't cart around a stage piano to most London venues on the tube. So that's when I started to mess around with electronics, and that's when I started to teach myself, how to record myself and how to produce. And it was quite early on, in around 18, 19, that I had one of these demos that I'd made, got picked up by Radio 1 in London, and played it a fair amount. And then suddenly I was in rooms with pop producers, kind of the go-to, probably 5 people in London that every young woman who has a pop kind of sound gets carted around initially in their early career. And I did about 6 months of that and realized I had a ton of songs half finished that didn't really sound like me, weren't particularly satisfying to what I wanted to do artistically. And that was my experience, especially as a fairly versatile vocalist. I just found myself with just not really doing what I wanted to do at all. So that's why I taught myself production, and that's when I decided, okay, I've got to be able to do what these guys are doing. I need to be able to take my ideas from start to finish, or at least get better at it, so then I can be in the room with a producer and say, this is what I'm trying to do, and have the tools to be able to articulate that to them. Just so happened that I'd done it enough and practiced enough that it ended up being what I do day in, day out, really. So I'm primarily an artist under the name of FAMME, F-E-M-M-E, and that's what I do day to day. And then meet lovely people like yourself at writing camps. But that's fairly, yeah, that's a fairly new thing for me. I don't do a lot of co-writing really. I do singing with other people on other people's records, DJs especially. But the producing for other people is kind of a new thing.
Yeah, that's a good segue into a point that I feel like is quite hard to. It's hard to kind of really communicate what it is to be in a writing room in terms of the producer, I would say, is running the room, but they're also facilitating somebody else's vision. And I think it takes a very particular skill set to be able to do that effectively. And I just would love for you guys to talk about how you entered into that space, and kind of what was kind of shocking, or what did you have to learn very quickly when in those situations, because you're still a creator, but you're not, you have to also exercise psychology, like Susan was saying today, and it's a totally different beast to working on your own music or working by yourself. So if you wouldn't mind just maybe talking about your early experience, or your first session like that, and what that was like and what you learned from it.
Okay, yeah. So I, again, this is from a pop writing perspective, so maybe this is different from, well, I'll say this, I did a lot of music with my friends, and I still continue to do that, and I feel like the process is different just because I know them a lot more intimately than, say, a person who I meet for the first time that day. Oh, closer? Okay. It's a consistent problem. Let's see. I'll start with the first session I ever had, the first pop session I ever had. Very nervous. I'm pretty sure I stressed myself into having a migraine, which is, a lot of stress. So in that scenario, you kind of talk to each other for an hour straight, and then just where are you from, and what are your influences, and just trying to acquaint yourself. But then I realized that she had a very strong personality, and then she knew that I was just starting, and then I felt like she almost kind of I hope she never hears this, but I felt like she was a type A person, was I'm going to take the reins in this and go with it. And
I like to call those people steamrollers.
Yeah. yeah, yeah, that's exactly what she did, But yeah, I think, and then shortly after that, I met with my friend Teddy Geiger. Do you know Teddy? Yeah. Okay, and I asked her, I had this really tough session. What do you do when somebody's like got a very strong personality? And she said, well, they kind of don't really listen to you until you've done something big. So I felt like that was a lot of pressure. But at the same time, what I took away from that was people have different personalities and different kind of communication styles. And I don't think she meant any ill intention. She wasn't like trying to be mean. She just had a different communication style, and she just felt strongly about that. Other writing sessions I have, like somebody who's 17 and is going to sign a publishing deal is sent to me, and they're like deer in headlights, completely freaked out every day meeting a new producer, a new personality. And I think in that scenario, it's kind of figuring out, okay, well, how can I create a safe, comfortable environment for a person to be willing to create with me today in an honest way? So I guess in like whatever scenario it is, I hope that whoever comes into my space feels heard and feels like it was a worthwhile time. So overall, that's what I've been trying to do. And I've gotten into meditating a lot.
Very LA.
Very LA. Yeah, after my yoga and my juices, I go to my TM meeting. No. But I use Headspace if you're curious. But that's been helping just to like remember not to internalize everything. And I loved what Coco Solid was saying yesterday. Like, we got to remember not to internalize like everything all the time to its full extent. It can be acknowledged and appreciated in other ways.
Cool, thank you. And so, from your perspective, I mean, you have to kind of like put half of your intention in life aside and half of your like the provocation of why you're doing this at all to like facilitate somebody else. So like, how is that for you, and how did you get introduced to being in those rooms?
I think that's probably why I quite enjoy doing it. It's like it's a relief from the artist side. You know, just I can honestly say in the rooms that I am in and I'm the producer in, I have zero agenda. You know, I don't have a record label breathing down my neck. I'm a self-released artist. At the minute, I'm actually self-published also. And the majority of, you know, how I've been able to sustain a professional career has come from sync, you know. So I don't have the pressures of I don't have to get a cut, I don't have, you know. So it's just fun for me, actually, a lot of the time. Being in those rooms, it's like, oh, this is a nice experiment, and I'm challenging myself to make good work in a different role. And I think that's actually this week. I always learn stuff coming to this because we made like a garage massive club tune the first day, and then yesterday we made like a very beautiful, serene indie tune. And I was like, well, that's why I do these things, because I come and I'm like able to unlock a completely different part of a skill set that I didn't even know I had, you know, because day to day I am working in my own kind of comfort zone as an artist. So yeah.
That's interesting, because I think that's something I learned when I moved to Los Angeles is not to hoard ideas. Like, it's such a huge part of participating in this kind of realm is to like understand that you aren't at capacity with all of your ideas at any one time. Like they as soon as you get them out, they make way for more. And like I think when you're in the artist headspace, it's hard to accept that. But as soon as you do, and the way that I unlocked that level was to like was to be in writing rooms. Like you're there to like my experience is similar. Like I am an artist, and I also spend a lot of time helping other people facilitate their ideas in writing rooms. So like to not hoard ideas and just to like expel them, and also accept when they get rejected, because that's also fine. You know, keep them for later or whatever. Like, do you feel like what's a good Christian? I don't know. I think it just like leads to ego. Like, what is your experience with like navigating your own ego, like in a room like that? And you know, I feel like, oh, go for it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm just reacting. I don't know.
Please
I don't know.
react.
I don't know.
I really need something to react.
Okay.
So.
Man, okay, it's just like getting hot up here. Did you have a thought?
No, I was just going to talk about like my experiences of like
Do it.
clashes in writing rooms.
Go for it.
I guess it's not something I do very often, but I had a recent experience at a writing camp. Funnily enough, we were put in a room. It was me, another woman who was an artist, and a fairly, I think, up and coming kind of very commercial pop writer, and I had that one thing that hasn't happened in ages, but like. You come in, it was me and an engineer in the room, a male engineer, and he walks in and he's kind of, there's that automatic kind of assumption that, that I was the top liner and the engineer was going to produce the session or whatever. It doesn't happen that often anymore, but it does still happen. And that can automatically sets a weird tone, because the person who's in the session all day for the rest of the day is quite embarrassed. He was quite embarrassed that he'd made that assumption, and that is something I still kind of like, because your ego is like.
Does it cause you to enter a kind of like alpha space where you're like,
completely?
I have to prove that this is the domain that I
completely.
Yeah.
Yes, and that, I got to say, that's something that's been great about this week, because you say everybody's women, so there isn't that, there's no room for that automatic assumption, and actually everybody that I've been in a room with is also more than capable, it seems, of recording themselves with it in some capacity, which is awesome and been really refreshing. So yeah, that's something. Yeah, it does automatically put you back up and kind of makes you assume a larger kind of space, so that's my experience of that.
I was just paying attention to what you were saying and not thinking of how I would respond. Ego. Yeah, I feel like it's like an everyday battle going into those rooms, because there's a lot of like expectation. Everybody's got a thing like, I hope we have a good song today. I hope this person makes a killer track. How long do I have to be here? Stuff like that. Yeah, it's like, we don't need to get Uber Eats. Let's just walk down the street for 2 hours and come back and maybe write something. But yeah, I really appreciated talking with Susan today, talking about like the long game, and every day is like an investment, and enjoying the process of it, and kind of the slow growth is the sustainable growth. So that's kind of the thing that I've been trying to remind myself. So if there's like a negative moment or like a negative day, to allow myself to like step out, breathe, even like stand up, and just like reassess and being like, hey, you're getting to make music, and tomorrow you're gonna make another song. So that's kind of how I've been working on that.
Yeah, I think my perspective is from almost the opposite side of the thing, because my job is to like kind of like ricochet around Los Angeles and like acclimate to different spaces every day, and like understand that most people don't clean their bathrooms, even if they know guests are coming, which I think is deeply unacceptable. So, but I think like that is forgiving for me, because I can leave. Like I go into a space and I kind of like have an experience, but I can bounce. Like, you guys, does it imbue your space with kind of like different like energies that you are just like resentful of. Like, I wonder if people like wish I wasn't in their room. Like, I don't know. I tend to shrink when there is a big ego in the room. And I also was saying yesterday or the other day that like I've only just learned that I can walk out of rooms if I don't like them. Like I've actually just sat with my insides like rotting, instead of just saying like, well, looks like you guys have got this, I'm out of here, and just like wasting my whole day. But I guess like how do you deal with other people like entering your space all the time? I feel like that's kind of confrontational, especially when you don't know what they like. Like really, I don't know how much people know about writing, like the writing circuit or whatever, pop writing circuit, is that oftentimes you get like blind date matchmaking by A&Rs, like speed dating, yeah. And it's, it's not always romantic.
I got to say, I think one of the things that follows me around, if you've had, like, say, a bad date, is the kind of the guilt that you feel as a producer in not finishing the track. That can be tough, because there's definitely a few half-finished songs on my, computer of just somebody that basically just couldn't sing in tune whatsoever, and I actually just can't face the hours and hours and hours of effort that it'll take to make 100%. That vocal sound.
That is labor.
It is, and you're doing it for free. Writing sessions are, time invested on a chance that it might get released at some point with somebody you don't know. A lot of the time, if you manage to find that one person that you really click with, and you're making great songs, and you manage to get like a writing partnership together, that I think you probably have more of a chance at making a hit that way than just randomly meeting somebody one morning. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but hasn't happened for me yet. So that's something that I, because just as a human, you're like, oh shit, I should finish that thing for that person. But also, if it's terrible and you're not invested in it creatively at all, then that can be really hard.
I can't remember the names of some of the producers I've worked with. I know he's Norwegian.
Publisher's like, what was his name? You're like, German duo. Yeah.
What about you, Wendy?
This is about when people come into the space.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would say, like, so yesterday we had a talk with somebody, and they were saying, like, don't let anyone dominate your vibe or your space, and like, don't acquiesce to somebody else's kind of like needs if it hinders yours in a way. And you're kind of like on the other side of the like conversation, in that you're trying to give someone vibe, but you're also trying to protect what you've built, which is the space that people are coming into. And like, I don't know, I find that to be a really interesting concept of like, especially as I hate to say it, but like as a woman, like you're like allowing people into a place that, is yours without knowing what's going to happen. Do you work like, because I only know about you really, I mean, like, I know about you working with a lot of, like, with sin, basically.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like men come in and they're like, look, I'm going to need you to take that picture off the wall.
Gosh. I've been really lucky. I feel like I can only really like name one experience that was bad with somebody coming to my studio, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they know where I am every day. Like, there's been only one time when that's happened all year. And I think they've, he's been blacklisted since then. I feel like people have been very respectful. I want people to be comfortable. I like buy snacks and like make sure there's water and like cold water and toilet paper and like hand soap. And
thank you. I thank you for all the writers in LA. Thank you.
Yeah, because I mean, like writers, you guys are having to drive over, and I get to just essentially sit in my pajamas and wait for you to arrive. gosh. Coming into the space. People have been very gracious, I got to say. I've been very fortunate, I think.
I think that is an important, like, somehow reminds me of, like, something else that was said yesterday, which is, like, that industry is different from the creative side. Like, you're kind of working in tandem, but they're such different beasts, and I often feel so, like, okay, anecdote. I was fortunate enough to be invited into kind of like a high level writing room in terms of, like, they were a very visible group, and it was a huge opportunity for me, and I was like shitting myself all the way to the session. But, like, their reputation was like not great. Like, they were kind of, they're deeply popular, but the critics absolutely hate them. And I don't, like, all I can do is read about whatever, and, like, I was so scared. And then I got there, and it's like, okay, hold on. This is literally just the same as any other day. These are 4 walls. They're 2 guys wanting to write a song, and they are buying me lunch, to be honest. So that's pretty cool. Love a free meal. But, like, at the end of the day, our goal is the same. Like, we all just want to make something good. We all just want to make a good song. And they've invited me here because they think I'm good. Like, to be honest, that's, and it honestly is so, like, interesting to me that their reputation, which is what we wrote the song about, gave me this fear, but it was so divorced from the reality of creation, which is such a, what's the word, kind of like, it's always a womb. Like, you're always in a womb trying to cook something up. Yeah. And in order to make anything good, oh, Victoria.
Just listening to the 3 of you say all of this, it's so fascinating to me that you all find yourself in this very constantly moving situation where you come into each other's spaces and you have to somehow find connections with people, because you're all artists, so you want to make these honest, authentic connections with the people that you write with. And at the same time, you're kind of passing in and out of each other's spaces. And you have to do it quickly. You know, like some of you have said, within the space of a day, you're in and out of a room or a few hours. For each of you, I'm really interested to know, like what you've just been saying, how do you, say Chelsea, for instance, when you find yourself in that room with those 2 people that have got this reputation, how do you then break the ice with them? How do you find the common ground? What are the techniques that you each have for looking into the soul of the person that you're working with to find the real piece of music that you could potentially create in that moment?
I mean, that was a learning situation for me because I don't think I nailed it. I have so many regrets about how I behaved in that room. I don't think I was my best self. And I think that because I had made the stakes so high for myself, when they are not. Like, they are just not. I mean, to be honest, like, it's a day, and, like, which leads to another thing, which I want to ask you guys about later. But, yeah, I like, regret how I was in that room, and I learned from it, which was super valuable. And it's also the thing that everyone's, when they talk about me as a writer, that's what they put next to my name, is that one day that I, because it came out as a single. So that's what I wanted to ask you guys about, was, like, how do you feel about one thing that you've done, like, being attached to your name, even it was just because, like, even though the nature of this is so, like, you just do it one day, and now it's like a thing that it's fucking over your head for the rest of your life. I don't regret it, but but do Victoria's one first.
Well, this is so going to sound strange, I suppose, but I've been on both sides, and I've probably actually done more co-writing work as a topliner than as a producer, and I used to hate writing camps.
Do you want to just say quickly what a topliner is?
So a topliner, in my experience of it, is usually you go into a room with large people you don't know, or you get sent a track, even on email, and it's your responsibility to write the melody and the lyrics over the top of it a lot of the time. Sometimes it's just melody. In my experience of it, I get sent tracks from, faceless DJs I've never met, and then I send them some vocal ideas back. Sometimes they use them, sometimes they don't, blah, blah, blah. So I've probably done more writing like that, honestly. And I'd say I used to hate writing camps as a top liner, just because my personal writing process is so intertwined with the programming. So, it's inseparable, really. I sit down and say it all kind of comes at the same time, the beats and the bass line and the lyrics and the melody, it's all just one thing. So for me to sit in those writing camps, as you say, you can sometimes just feel yourself shrinking. If it's going in a weird direction, you think, well, I have nothing to contribute to where this is going directionally. It can be feel very isolating, and you can leave those rooms feeling really kind of is it me? Am I just not cut out for this? Am I not very good at writing this kind of music? Or maybe I'm, and that can be really tough. Until I started, I think Paris was the first camp I did as a producer. Which is bonkers. That's how I'm here.
We wrote a
right
fucking
now.
Good song, by the way.
We did. I know. I still listen to it. And that camp for me, it was just like an absolute revelation. And it only came about as my role as a producer there because somebody asked me. Really was that simple. Because I've always produced my own music as an artist, and it's always in the fucking press release. But because I'm making pop music, for some reason, people don't seem to connect those two things. They just say, oh, Laura, singer, great. So for somebody, the women that were running that camp to say, Laura, would you like to do this as a top liner or a producer? And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it as a producer. And I just had the best time ever. And I think that's in me as, when I'm in my producer role, because I've been on both sides. And I've been in those uncomfortable situations with producers that are just like, right, this is the track we're making today. You fit around, this, whatever, tropical house tune that I'm making. It's like, I'm very sympathetic to the people that come into my room. And honestly, I'm just like, whatever, usually they lead it, or I have a little kind of loop, 4x loop set up, and we riff off that for a while. And I think you also have to be able to say, oh, that's maybe not working. And I have always stayed in touch largely with a lot of people that I've written with, even if the music never sees the light of day. It's like I can always find a friend in most of the people that I end up in rooms with, but you don't have to force any kind of weird creative connection.
Bingo.
Yeah.
I totally think that's I would like to illuminate that point. You don't have to force a creative connection. You just have to get on as humans.
You just go to the pub instead. Say, hey, this is great. Let's just go to the pub.
It doesn't matter. Okay, sorry.
I think I forgot the question.
Derailed you.
How do you break down the barriers with the people that you work with when you meet them immediately and you somehow find a connection?
Go in on your personal issues.
I think that, a lot of people do that. Talking about dating things, and then that opens up things, and then people talk about family history, or where they're from, or I think I've written with some very successful writers and producers, and I've noticed that the most successful people are the nicest people and most gracious, and I've tried to learn from what kind of environment they create and what kind of culture they create. And I think, being honest about how much you want to reveal is totally cool, I feel like artists are pretty open to talking about their feelings, so most of the time people are pretty open to talking about what they would like to write about that day. As far as I think it's more difficult with with artists, because there's the pressure of well, if we write about this, I'm going to be singing this for the next 3 years. So in that case, I I try not to plant that seed in their mind, like, I'm going to be singing about this for the next 3 years, but like, what's going on today, and what do you feel like is going to be an effortless expression of what you're going through?
Actually, something you said reminded me, there are methods that I have tried. So like when I'm working with an artist, which is my favorite thing to do, like instead of pitch, which is horrible, but is to like meet them off premises first and like have a conversation over coffee and not have any agenda, just kind of like, what are you like? How are you feeling as a person? And this isn't anything to do with the session we're about to do. Like, we just don't know each other. Like, let's just break down that barrier. And it's such fertile ground.
Do you bond over the music you like?
Yeah, that's a dangerous one, I feel like. But yeah, I guess like you ask what they're listening to at the time. I guess most people bring references, which is apparently a dirty thing to do, but I'm into it. But also, like, when I had like a writing partner for a short time, we would decide who was going to conduct the conversation so that the third person didn't feel overwhelmed. And then one of us would hang back and just make little notes about phrases that they were saying, and then kind of like come back and be like, so like, I noticed you said something about this, like, can we talk about that? Was that something you'd be interested in writing about? And that was kind of cool.
Can you go in a little bit on something you just said about writing with the artist versus writing for pitch? Like, is it something you do a lot, just write in isolation by yourself and then try and pitch it through to another artist, or do you write with another artist in mind?
My experience of writing for pitch is just pure apathy. Like, you get... Well, the problem is that, like, the problem I've encountered is that you go into a room with no goal and no one to kind of, like, guide the vibe. So, like...
And do you usually do that with the producer? Like,
always. Okay, so, like, my process is that I never write a song unless I'm with a producer. I just don't do it because I want it to be done in a day. I don't want to hear labor in my music. I want it to be like all the work that I do to like lead up to those days. I write every day, but like, and like reading is like a huge one for me. But I keep like notes and stuff and vocal memos and stuff, but I only write a song when I'm in a studio situation and in a session. I just don't want to waste all of that on like half thoughts and like being distracted, and I just want to like make sure that it's optimal scenario to like get the best out of that idea, you know? If it's not finished mostly in a day, I probably won't finish it. Would you say that's true of yours?
Yeah. So I'm signed as a producer first, and then topliner second. I feel like I'm a stronger producer than I am a topliner. I think a lot of times for songs for pitch, what they're imagining is that the song is essentially radio ready. They just take out the demo vocal and they sing over it, and that's literally it. They don't want to do any more work unless they're saying, can you add a reverse cymbal here? I'm not sure. Like, they might give you notes and that. Yeah, so a lot of times it helps to team up like with a producer or topliner to just make the process more efficient, and I guess for me that would be more fun.
Do you find that to be a successful like avenue, writing for pitch? Because Chelsea said it's kind of hard to get an angle on something without...
Well, my problem with it is that I don't think necessarily always people on the record, like the industry side, know what's going to come next. Like, I don't necessarily think that they want something that's already happened and you already know that's not going to work. Like, you're like, oh, well, cool, I'll be a step behind. Sick. And like, that's my experience.
Yeah, gosh, I think the songs for pitch that have worked for me have been just pretty stripped down and like incredibly honest. And it's just like a song that anybody could do, and it doesn't like pigeonhole any like genre to it. I found that that's been the most effective presentation of a song for pitch. Yeah, otherwise you're kind of guessing like, well, is Rihanna really doing a dance hall record? Maybe we should do a dance hall track, you know? Yeah. And then it turns out she's gonna do something else, and nobody's gonna do dance hall, you know? But no, it's a, you know, hypothetical.
Because they send around lists of who is looking and like who's looking for something, but like you can't read someone's name and know what they're really looking for. That's my opinion, and then this might change tomorrow, but like I feel like I'm pretty cynical about that. I feel like my main thing is if I write for myself or like write for my own taste, that's more likely to like be accepted. Yeah.
And
even if I don't cut the song myself. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say half the time on those pitch lists, I've definitely come across artists that don't know their names are on that list. And that says a lot about the music industry, you know, that they've been, you know, their name is on that list looking for songs being sent around the entire UK music industry, or probably global music industry, and they have no idea. Well, that's music business, I guess.
Sorry, Victoria.
It's really fascinating, the resignation, the sense of resignation that we have about that. I had no idea that there was such a thing as a pitch list.
Oh, yeah.
With people's names on it, and it just kind of circulates.
By the time you get it, it's already old. Like,
Really? So what does that mean then for your creative instincts?
I just try to be an artist.
Yeah, I think just like if we listen to music that's on trend, the other artists are probably listening to music on trend, and then hopefully we're just like all like moving in some kind of huge wave together, and instead of being like, okay, well, let's listen to Demi Lovato's last album and see what the next step of progression is from that. Maybe just like a cultural kind of step.
Or like,
how do you, like, you know, you did that speed dating analogy, and the main thing is with speed dating or whatever is that you're trying to improve your chances of finding someone who's compatible with you. Is there some way that you can influence the people you get to work with in some way, or is it
Totally.
just random ads? Or?
I think for me, sorry. No, go for it. For me, when I first moved to LA, I didn't know anybody, and I was just exploiting my friendships to get songs. Basically, like I'd be like, "Can we do a session?" And then those people's publishers started learning about me, and then I'd go in for meetings. The meeting would never be like, "Here's a publishing deal." It would be like, "Okay, so like we can set you up with these people," and I'd be like, "Yes, like get me in rooms with anybody. I will take any session." Like I was like hungry for the sessions. But then I learned like that I just function better with certain people, and like you can always say no to a session. People are like not turning up to a session is like as common as anything. Like people are not reliable. it's so like what's the word? They're almost meaningless. Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my issues with writing world. I don't say, Wendy, you probably can share your side of this, but like, say, I mainly make the majority of living through sync. So that's music I've probably written that brands come and say, yeah, we want that for this, and it's a lucrative income source for me. But equally, every time I do a demo, because you do pitches in that world, obviously, also, there's a demo fee attached to that. So I'm never sitting in my studio and like working for nothing. So this idea, like if that's your, say, day in, day out of going into sessions, unless you're at the upper echelons of kind of the writing sessions, it does kind of baffle me, the practice of it, of say, it seems like a big risk of your kind of time and creative ideas sometimes to just do it day in, day out without, you know, we all have to pay our bills and we all have to make a living.
Songwriters don't get paid.
Yeah.
I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do sessions unless unless it's an artist or I like the person already. Like,
can you be proactive about who you write? Like, can you ask?
Oh, totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just like, my people will contact your people. I really want to work with Wendy now because we like the same ice cream joint.
Let's do it.
All right.
It's very clear you all are obviously very creative. How do you find working professionally and always keeping that flow of creativity in your life, seeing that you guys will do it, well, I guess as a living? Is that easy to keep that flow, even though that you're very professional about it?
You are probably the most eligible to answer this
Oh
question.
my gosh. Okay. Because of the volume?
Yeah, you're like, yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. You know, so I'm still trying to figure out what's the most efficient long-run process. What's the most sustainable way of approaching creativity? I think doing things that are not music is really important. Self-care, you know, we were talking about that. Spending time with my family and friends, like resting, like being open to other people's creativity is another thing. I think not putting pressure on myself to be creative is helpful too. And Susan was even saying, like, they found, like in studies, they found that when people are happy and healthy, that's when they thrive creatively. And also, I heard that, like, if the fear part of your brain is on, you physically can't be creative. So maybe practicing not functioning on a level of fear, but out of not fear. Yeah.
And I think it's something that I have gotten a lot better at as I've gotten older. I think certainly in my early kind of 20s and late teens, you put a lot of pressure on yourself comparing your career and your path to your contemporaries, or not even your contemporaries, but, you know, other artists' careers. And certainly for a lot of years, you'd be like, oh God, you know, I'm 23 and I haven't got that record deal. And you're like, oh my God, I'm 25, I still haven't got that record deal. Oh, you know, and you're just like, and then it got to a point where you're just like, especially with the kind of explosion of streaming and probably, I guess, me figuring out that I was never going to thrive with a major record deal. Like, I had a few very strange meetings with some of them, and I was like, yeah, this is not my path. As soon as I figured that out, and actually as I got older, every year on year, I just, you know, you realize that there's not one path for anybody anymore. There's not one way of doing this. It's everybody arrives at certain points at different times, and I never do anything. If you know, things can be hard and they can be a struggle, but it's always within my control, and that's something that I've figured out, that's what makes me continue doing it every single day. And I need that control to be able to enjoy doing this job. And that's not for everybody, you know. Some people really thrive under the kind of the major label system, and in that, and I say it's just there's different paths that everyone can walk down really for this.
Oh, totally. Everything you said made total sense. I think I was just thinking about how when I was like 23, I was a dishwasher, and I told the kitchen that if I wasn't like performing at the New Zealand Music Awards by 25, I'd give it up. I'm 29. And I have not performed at the New Zealand Music Awards. Yeah. Anna.
My question is, this sort of collaborative writing and stuff that you're talking about is relatively foreign to a lot of New Zealand artists, like to operate like that. But I'm wondering if, I know that you're both producers and also writers, do you usually work just with yourselves and an artist, or do you usually have another writer in the room as well? And do you feel like there's some kind of combination that works better than others? Do you find it beneficial to have a third brain in the room? Is 4 too many? Like, do you have any ideas on that kind of thing?
It just is different day to day, really. But I had a great session, I think, last week with a very young songwriter who is like kind of up and coming, who's he's had like a James Arthur single, and well, whatever. And I think he was on a Disciples record. So he's kind of up and coming. He hasn't quite got his like massive hit yet, but he just writes. He doesn't want to be an artist. He doesn't sing actually. He just writes. So I was with him, and then the guy, a much older man, who wrote Rihanna's SOS. So two very different people at very different points of their career, but they were really tight. They had met in LA, funny enough, and I was producing the session. And it was great. I mean, for me, it's always just a social experiment, really. I don't put any pressure on those sessions whatsoever to get, I want to make the next David Guetta single. That's not my motivation for making music whatsoever, and I don't think that's ever going to change. But to be with them, and certainly the older guy did command, and he did kind of railroad the session somewhat in a direction, but equally, he was open to a few suggestions, and then it was my role really to say, well, actually, I think David's contribute. I think actually this might be a better direction to go in. But you're basically the whole time I'm just kind of like reading the atmosphere in the room, and is essentially all you are writing to of course you are, but as producer you do have some not authority, but you do physically do have the cursor to be of like, I'm just gonna. You could essentially, if you wanted to, and you had no consideration for the other writers in the room, you could just take that session, completely remake it, and I'm sure probably in some areas of the industry, I mean, I bet that's probably happened. That song leaves that room and it ends up in a completely different form without possibly the writers even knowing about it. But I guess it comes down to ego, and it comes down to agenda, and I don't really have one in those rooms. And I don't have the experience that Wendy probably has, say that's a main focus for you as producer in the more of the pop kind of world. So I don't know. I don't know what I was trying to say though. I just rambled on for a second.
I like all the things you said.
Yeah, I like that. So I guess my ideal setup would be writing with an artist, writing with a topliner. Just so that I can work on the track as they're working on the melody and lyrics. So once like a progression is established and a vibe is established, we can kind of like concurrently work out the song together. I have been in sessions where the artists say, okay, I feel strong enough in my songwriting that it could just be me and the producer. And I like trusting people's like assessment of themselves, and unless they just have nothing to say, then in the next session that doesn't really happen. Unless they don't have anything to say, maybe next time I'd be like, let's bring in a topliner and see what other ideas can be, can like bolster your thoughts and your vision. But yeah, that's my ideal setup.
Mine is the same.
Yeah.
I like to be the topliner. I like there to be the artist in the room, and I like for there to be and the exact same thing, like the concurrent thing, because it means that there's like an energy of work happening, and you kind of like feel the vibe, and you ride the wave. Depends on the artist, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're writing with an artist in the room, then it's always got to be led essentially by them. Sometimes if they're not offering anything at all, if they're a very young or possibly beginner songwriter, then you have to coax something out of them, and that might be, what do you think of this? But yeah, 100%, yeah, very much. And I think that's, I don't know, that's a weird area, kind of grey area with pop music at the minute, because so many producers, they have their sound, and a lot of the commercial pop world does follow trends, and usually 2 steps behind a trend. you know. So 2 days a week I'm in this like producing kind of complex in the UK they're essentially like a weird hit factory full of producers making largely at the minute reggaeton and dancehall and grime. And I'm like the weirdo making fucking, I don't know, just, you know, the odd one out in there making stuff for myself. But it's been really revelatory to me to like, you know, it's a very different world, commercial pop writing, to kind of say the more alternative scene that I think New Zealand has going on here. And for me personally, it's much more satisfying to follow the artist lead. Always, because I have the satisfaction of having an artist project. If I didn't have an artist project, I don't know, maybe that would be different.
You had a question, right?
Can I quickly say that like the artist that we've both worked with, Sin, the reason I like working with her so much is because she knows what she wants. She comes in, she's like nudging the producer off the desk so she could do stuff. I love that. Anyway, I'm like, oh, take me with you. Like, I want to be in your world. Like, it sounds great.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, wait, hold on. She had a question.
I don't know if it's like super relevant, but you guys are like artists and producers and writers. I think I'm kind of like coming from a place where I've just always been an artist, but also like this whole experience kind of opened up like, oh, it can actually be producer and not produce your own stuff or a writer and all that stuff. So have you guys found that, like how did you find that sort of path that you guys are talking about? And have you found it really easy to like switch hands? Or do you see like one aspect as like your passion work and then you have this as like your, or is it all of the things that you love doing anyway? That's, yeah, it's really interesting.
I mean, for me, you're starting to hear from me again. I like went from being in publishing meetings where I would leave when they'd be like, keep in touch. We'll put you in touch with this person. Those meetings I would go in, I'd say, yeah, I guess I'm a writer. Like, I guess, and I'd downplay my artist project because I was like, didn't think I was good enough. But then I like actually just played a show for the first time in LA, and I was like, I'm fucking awesome, actually. Like, yep, I'm an artist, and this other, whatever I am, and and then I started going into pub meetings, and I was like, yeah, I'm an artist, and I also want to help other people write their songs because I'm very good at it. So I was like, I'm very good at lyrics because I'm in America. You kind of have to, but I believe in that so hard. I believe in all of those things I just said. So.
Yeah. No, she's right, and there's definitely something in claiming those titles, and it's something I think that comes very naturally to men, and we possibly encourage men to do, or boys to do from a young age. You know, I've certainly come across a lot of producers that are not as kind of accomplished or skilled as I am for a very long time, whereas I was always going into those sessions as top liner because I was like, oh God, I can't possibly be producing in the kind of commercial world. Yeah, so just, you know, claim those titles, but it's, I can't remember what the question was, the original question was, sorry.
It's like, how do you like, it was kind of like, how do you find room
how do you juggle
to, like,
them both?
understand where you are?
Do you see it as switching hats, or do you see it as like, I like doing this and I also like doing this, and it's all good?
Yeah, I see it as switching hats. And I think the music industry today, especially if you're an independent artist, like I have survived through my kind of multi-hyphen title. And I've evolved with the industry as it's evolved. You know, I was just at the tail end of kind of MySpace era, you know, just as that kind of was dying out, and so very much the SoundCloud era kind of person, and have seen, okay, I'd say I don't work in the commercial pop world, so I can't make a lot of money out of writing that way. I can make a little bit of money out of being my artist project. I can make a decent living doing this. And then also DJing is something that I've realized in very recent years that live wasn't working for me. Like touring was fucking expensive. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to, and then you figure it out and you morph and you change and you add a few more hyphens to your title. And I introduce myself as different things for different circles, to be honest. If I was at like a big whatever festival, I'd be like, yeah, I'm a DJ and producer. And if I'm at a writing camp, I'm like, yeah, I'm a producer writer. And I don't know, there's all these different hats that you can wear, and I enjoy putting different ones on for different roles.
So as I mentioned before, I was a touring musician, so I was like a session guitarist and bass player, and sometimes I'd sing on stuff too. I really enjoy it when people trust my judgment in the creative process. So I try to like go into that with if somebody else is hosting me. So if I know that I'm going in as a guitar player and somebody else is producing, I shut my mouth about anything production unless they're like, hey, can you help me with this guitar tone? Like, what would you do here? Then I'm like, okay. Like, think about like playing sports, like, oh gosh, well, I know baseball the best, but you guys don't play baseball here. Well, it's just
Go with it.
like the left fielder wouldn't be like telling the first baseman like run across the field and like play their position, and even like I'm an aunt. I have a niece, and I don't step into my older sister's job. That's not the expectation. Unless she expressly asks me, like, can you do this for me? So I like having the lower stress positions and then also being in charge once in a while.
Yeah, I'd say it like feeds each other, right? Like if you're like one day writing and one day you're the artist, it's like, well, the muscle helps me be an artist. If I'm writing for someone else, I learn a lot from working with other people. We haven't heard from you. What's your question?
Sorry, going back to the age thing, do you find there's a lot more pressure on the age of women, especially in like commercial sense, like being younger? Like I know how old Taylor Swift is and Rihanna, but I have no idea how old Calvin Harris is. And I feel like there's just a bit of anxiety. It's like, God, I was with mum one day and I was all this stuff. And I was like, shit, I might have time to put my whole into music.
Look at me.
We're all just looking at her.
I totally feel that way. I feel so pressured about that. I know most people, actually, like I have a little circle of female musician friends. We have like a group chat and we just talk about all of our concerns about existing in the music industry in LA. It's a really prevalent issue. And I don't know, I was like, when I was just gonna be a writer, I was like, I'm gonna call myself grandma. Like that's gonna be my name. Because I'm like older when it comes to topliners. At the age of 29. I mean, but I think, wait, I think we're still doing this question. I can't remember what I was going to say. Go.
I was going to say, yes, I think it is a strange issue. It's largely perpetuated by the media, like you say. It's always so-and-so, 21, so-and-so, 42. I have seen a shift recently, though, that they are starting to report the guys' ages, which I think is really positive. Why we have to have the age following directly somebody's name anyway, and what that has to do with music, I really don't know. And I really wish that would go away. Just introduce somebody as somebody, and who they are, regardless of age, and we'll make a judgment on whether we like their music, based on the music and, and their project, rather than, what they've achieved by a certain age. Yeah, so I think it still is an issue, but I do think it is going in the right direction.
I wanted to make a revision of what I said earlier about like if I'm a session guitar player and I'm in a session, say Chelsea's in a writing room with me and she's like, oh, can we, instead of like a snare, can we do like a cross stick? Like I'll be like, yeah, oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. Like I feel like that's a little more flexible as far as like if you're creating a song together, and even though she's focusing on melody and lyrics, she's fully part of creating the song, and if she has an idea, I welcome it. You know, if she like pushes me out of my chair and changes my shortcut settings, then I'm like, all right, Chelsea, well, I'll see you later. But yeah, so I guess that's like an encouragement for like if you're a top liner and you do have some kind of like idea, like feel out the producer. Like if you're really comfortable with them, I think it's okay to like make creative suggestions. But yeah, it's definitely like a very touchy, kind of almost like gray area. Wouldn't you say like you don't, like a lot of times if you're working with a producer, you're not like...
I never treat it as a gray area.
Oh, really?
I'm like, yeah, like let's try.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, good. Okay, cool. That's good.
On the age thing though, like I feel it's so hard that but I don't like that discomfort. It's not mine. Like I don't feel it as a person. I just feel it because people are telling me to feel it. So like, I don't know. I think I'm a bit of a brat. Like if someone tells me one thing, I want to do the other thing. So like, I went to a writing camp in New Jersey. 3 women out of 15 people were there. And there was a New Yorker writer that was coming around and like sitting in on all the sessions. And afterwards, at the like after party or whatever, he was like going around talking to everyone. And like, I was definitely like the oldest woman there. And I was bunking with them. And anyway, and I was like, he asked me if it was okay to print my age. And I was like, fucking print my age. Like, you better print my fucking age. I'm 29 and I'm a good writer. Like, and it's because I'm 29 and I've like had 29 years of writing. Like,
yeah, I don't know. One thing I will say is it does get easier. I feel like once you get over the quarter life hump, you just really do start to give less of a fuck about anything.
It's true.
In my experience, so it gets better.
Oh yeah, I had a writing session with somebody and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm a dinosaur. I'm like, really? How old are you? He's like, I'm 26. I'm like, oh my gosh, I must be like an amoeba, you know? That's insane. I'm 36. For real. Thank you.
I was just going to say about the age thing for women. I've noticed that like a lot of like women artists are usually very young. You don't get like everything. But Debbie Harry actually started her career at 35, and she's like icon. So.
Bjork, 28. Madonna, hit single at 28. That was her first crossover single. They're out there. But unfortunately, also, the media just makes stuff up also. It's like, you don't really know, unless you're best friends with the artist, you don't actually know how old they are. Unless you see a copy of their passport. Like, so you can say anything in a press release. You really can, you know. So I believe anything that you read.
And, sorry, Priya.
This isn't related to the age, but it's related to numbers. See, Anna was saying we should write together, and now I'm like, how does it work? And what are the numbers? Like percentage, like when you go into a writing room, how do you protect that idea and make sure that someone doesn't fuck off with it?
The camp we went to was actually, the point of the camp was to promote this app that was like a writing app. And it was like, it's like Max Martin has like a stake in this app that like you log your contribution as you're writing. But I honestly believe in Nashville splits, like equal in the room.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's just easy, it's not messy. Frankly, I feel like insulted if people try and come back with little numbers. Like, I'm just like, get a grip, like, come on. Were you like really paying attention to like every little word that led to every other little thing? Just like make it even. Just make it even.
Yeah, totally. Nashville splits every session that I'm in. If you're in the room, you get an equal amount.
Yeah. A grey area in the conversations we had, though, possibly if you're coming with the song that you've written on guitar, and then that's a production role. And then usually you would pay that producer, or if you can't afford to pay that producer, you would have to give them some publishing, possibly, on your track, or, mechanical points. But there is no rules about this. This is a conversation that you have to have. And if you're friends with them and you feel comfortable enough having that conversation, then I would always suggest that it's you two that figure that out, or you 3 or 4, 5, 6. And do it sooner rather than later, because you do not want to do it, 2 weeks before that it's meant to come out, and then it just becomes some very horrible, awkward conversation between managers and lawyers and stuff like that. I don't think it's a conversation anyone particularly enjoys having, but say splitting
Have it before
equally.
the session.
Yeah, exactly.
Have it before the session.
Yeah, like walking into a room and if you're writing something from scratch together, then equal just seems to be more straightforward.
It's actually, it's a really good point. I've seen a lot of relationships fall apart over this. Like, there are no rules about how to pay everyone, but you should definitely talk about paying everyone. Like, for example, maybe someone has a $10,000 a song fee, and that's their producer fee, and like they've earned that fee. They've like built up their career to earn that fee, and like I've just seen people get offended by being asked for that amount of money. But the way that maybe I would suggest responding to that number is like, okay, well, I can't afford that, but what I can do is give you a percentage on the master and like give you a percentage of my Spotify plays until that's paid off, and then we can renegotiate if I sign with a major, if I sign with an indie. Like, conversations, like there are so many. I've got agreements with people which are very generous, like on their behalf. They've like said, basically the agreement is that they believe in me enough that they are like not expecting the fee up front, and they're allowing me to like pay it over time. Like, but I just feel like people don't have those conversations, and then when they can't pay the $10,000, like somebody gets offended, and it's just like gets messy. But people are open to different scenarios of like how to deal with the master and like how to deal with the production fee. Do you feel it's...
Yeah, I agree. Mm.
Yes.
Have you ever been in a situation in a room or in a long-term, say, or short-term creative partnership with a man, but it could be a woman or anyone else as well, but with a person where you're very reliant upon them in the creative partnership, but you feel unable to make anything with that person, and severing the creative relationship with them is too risky or too difficult. I guess I'm asking about a block with a particular person that you accidentally end up inextricably entwined with. Do you ever...
I've definitely had that situation. Yeah, totally. I had a situation where I was, this is a very long, complicated thing, but like, I was in a situation where I had come to a place to work with someone, and I was involved with them in another way, and my creative process was tied to that person, and I made the mistake in my mind of assuming that they were the only person that could service this role. And then they said, no, we can't do that anymore. Like, we're not doing that. So like that killed me inside. But then I found 1,000 other people that could service. It wasn't, it turns out that it was my mental block, and like, it actually helped me become stronger. How did I find them? I really just asked around. I really did. It was so uncomfortable. And like, but then in the end, that person wanted to come back and work with me. Because I actually, but like, fair enough, like I got better at it and it stopped being so intertwined with that other aspect of our relationship, and like I was just more professional and like it was easier. But I think that don't put all your eggs in one basket is my advice there. If you, I know you're good, Colleen, so so just like you should know that you're also, inside you should know that you are very good, and like you can take your goodness everywhere. Like you're the nucleus of any room, and like it doesn't, your talent isn't reliant on that person. It's not.
Did you guys have anything like that?
No, because largely I write alone a lot of the time. But I am part of like a side project. This is an interesting one. So I've got like a side project band that I'm in with 2 members who are from a completely different era of the music industry. One of them's a very famous record producer of a 90s kind of rock band. And the other one is a very well-known LA drummer. And it was kind of like, there's definitely been moments and continues to be moments, not so much now, but when I first kind of became part of this project as kind of an add-on, they had a lot of the instrumental stuff done. And I was I was writing the top lines and but then you're fronting it, so it's my face, but equally you kind of feel, when I was first starting out, because I didn't have any accomplishments to my name particularly, I had an unknown artist project, so I was very much kind of I felt like I was at the mercy of their kind of, well, these guys are very successful, they must know exactly what they're doing kind of thing. And again, I would say that is something that gets a lot easier to kind of claim your space as you get older. It's definitely something, I mean, if I could talk to my 21-year-old self now and be like, stop worrying about all that stuff, and just, and if there's ever times that you're uncomfortable in any of those situations, like I say, just like go and, like, it's a pretty big music industry. There's lots of people out there that can help you facilitate your kind of artistic intention, and you need to be able to experiment to find the right fit for you. You might not have come across that thing that's going to propel you into that next level that you want to be yet. You might not have found that person, so you have to be working with more people to be able to find that and challenge yourself and pull other things out of you creatively that you won't find alone. And so that's as much as I've never been a member of a band because I like working on my own. I like completely satisfying my own I like making all the decisions, and I'm possibly, a control freak in that way. But that's what I like to do. But I got to say, having the band and side project, like, I've learned so much about myself and how I interact with other human beings and the compromises that have to be made creatively and kind of personally through that experience, So, yeah, put yourself out there. Go and work with other people.
Susan.
I have a question. A couple of students came to me with this problem, and I know how I would have solved it for my generation, but the solution doesn't really apply to their generation, so maybe you guys can tell me how you would have solved it. Female student writes a song. She writes the lyrics, the melody, the chord changes, just a guitar playing. Takes it to a male, their gender doesn't matter, but she takes it to a guy who is a producer engineer, and he creates the track. He does the programs the drums, makes the whole track, makes a song out of it. At the end of the day, she says, this doesn't represent me. I don't like it. I'm taking this song back. He's saying, well, if it doesn't represent you, it definitely represents me. I'm keeping it. And it was like one of those biblical dilemmas. They each came to me and said, whose song is it? Who gets to keep the hard drive? Who owns it? What would you say?
I would call my lawyer. I really would. I would actually send my lawyer an email and say, like, look, just heads up. Because, okay, just simply because I've been in situations that are not that like that, but do infringe on my copyright, and just a simple cease and desist letter is very effective. But I would put my foot down. No, that doesn't. No, especially that to me that's like a songwriter and a producer. Like that's not co-writing to me.
I would say in that situation, it sounds like she came with a finished, well, like a written song at least. You know, that is a production role. So I would say it definitely reverts to her to be. But yeah. 100%. If that was me in that situation, then I would be like, yeah, I wasted some time producing a track, but whatever. Like, you got to let it go.
Yeah, I agree. The song is still hers. She wrote the chords, the melody, the lyrics. She was just auditioning this producer.
Totally auditioning.
Yeah.
People do that all the time, like take it to different producers.
Possibly he could take that instrumental and get a different singer on it.
Right.
Maybe she has to be open to that.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably the solution there for him to be, yeah, fine, take my vocal off it, take all the lyrics out, take the melody out, and go and do what you want with that. And that's maybe the compromise.
What would you do?
Well, in the olden days, when we rode dinosaurs to the studio, a song legally was lyrics, melody, 50 days. So my answer to her was, it's your song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the melody, you own it. But then I got to thinking about the modern way of doing things where beat makers get songwriting credit now.
Mm-hmm.
And he did program the drums and he created the track. So I thought, well, maybe it's different now.
To me, that only applies when you're in the same room. Well, I don't know if you guys agree, but
I think if there are crucial hooks in the instrumental and chord changes have been made and both parties are satisfied with that, then you could get writing credit. But that's like an extreme change that would have to happen. Otherwise, you would just get a production fee or credit. That's how I would read that.
How does that translate to a low budget environment where somebody can't afford to pay a production fee?
I was saying it before, like I couldn't afford to pay production fees, especially because someone I was working with got a really big cut while we were working together, and then his fee became astronomical. But because we had a good relationship, he was open to different ways of. That's what I was saying before. Like he was open to different ways of approaching that. We have. It's all like. It's not a handshake agreement. I really feel like the ultimate thing is that I have enough respect for everyone that I work with to like ask what they're comfortable with, and also like put it in writing for them and for me, that even if it's just like a one-page agreement that we both understand, that's like, I really don't believe in not paying people. I think that's really boring. But he was open to like me paying it over time. So, and based off of my Spotify plays. So like basically if I get this amount of plays, then I start paying him this amount of money out of my Spotify, whatever.
So how does that apply when you're going from writing room to writing room and you're working with people that you don't know or perhaps haven't worked with before? Is there paperwork that gets laid down in advance? So that you make an agreement, you say, okay, we don't know each other, we're going to perform these roles in this room, and we're going to put our names down now to prevent any trouble in the future?
The writing room thing is usually if I'm going into a writing session with somebody, I largely start with a very, very, very basic idea. So I've never had an artist come to me with a finished song and say, this is what we want to work on, because that for me is a production role, and it would be a fee that's agreed in advance. Or I have done things where I'm like, whatever, just, we'll just split the writing anyway, even though it's a production role, knowing that the song, is never going to make enough money for the time I'm going to put in. But it's just a sign of respect, really, in some ways, mutual respect for each other, that, you're both investing this time for nothing, and you both value each other's kind of professional input into that, even though, say, the track might never make any money. But no, I've never had the situation. It's always just agreed in advance, and so I try and write from scratch as much as possible. So everybody's input in that room is kind of equal. You know, you're starting from the same point. That makes things easier.
I guess from my experience, I've never had to do the actual paperwork in the session. Usually the managers communicate about the business side of things. That's been my experience, but I guess it's very different if you don't have a manager doing that. But I think another thing that's really important is one time a publisher was trying to take advantage of how much they owned of my songs, like the publishing, like the royalties, and ASCAP stepped in for me and advocated for me. So I love them, and I think there's resources of people like saying this is the industry standard, and here's the precedent for that, and here are the reasons why. I think APRA, I'm sure, would totally come to bring down the justice if it's needed. They've seen a lot.
I also think, on that note of managers negotiating things, if you don't have a manager, just pretend to be your own manager. Use a different name. To be honest, use a different name in emails and just be a hard ass.
Yeah. The bully.
I think, just thinking about this as you've said it, I think so much of this industry operates on trust. Think about that. You're going into sessions every day with people you don't know. You're leaving your ideas on their computers a lot of the time. You don't have any guarantee that song's ever going to see the light of day. You trust that if it does get released or it gets synced or something, that person's going to take the effort to dig out your email and send you a message and let you know that that's happening. I guess you just treat people how you would want to be treated. And there's definitely people out there in the industry that would take advantage of that. I've heard some horror stories of writers whose tracks have been released without any credit, without any notice that they were coming out, big songwriters. But I would never do that to anybody. I don't think any of us in this room would ever do that to anybody. You appreciate the value you're putting into that room, and you'd hope that the other person would respect you enough to kind of honour that. So I think that's what we've all got to do, really, going forwards, just to kind of acknowledge the respect and that trust that you're putting into that writing, and treat that work as you would want to be treated yourself, kind of thing.
Hello.
Over this last week, we've heard a lot about some legendary session writing times where people were in the studio and someone recorded with Prince for 24 hours and then still kept going, and then I heard, it's crazy. And then I saw an interview a little while ago where Beyonce in her Destiny's Child days is talking about it takes 5 hours to make a good hit record, and I was just wondering what your experience was with, I know. So I was just wondering what your experience was with in terms of time, and I assume it has a lot to do with the people you're with, but I'd love to hear what you have to say that might speak to the amount of time for a hit or whatever.
I had a funny experience in Nashville where I went to a session and we wrote a song in 2 hours, and he was like, cool, so I have a session coming up, so bye. I was like, either you hate the song we've just made and you don't want to work on it anymore, or this is how Nashville works. I don't know.
That's amazing. 2 hours. I don't know. I try to only write one song a day. I think that's more my style. Okay, so I guess this is really practical. My sessions start at 1 p.m. and they end by 6 or 6:30. And sometimes the track is done by the end of the day. Sometimes I need another week to finish it. But I think high output is highly encouraged.
Batting averages.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? You write 500 songs, maybe 5 will be good. Probably 5 will be very good. if you write 500.
Right, like like Susan was saying, like you like creating these opportunities, you're creating more visibility by making more things. Yeah. 1 to 6.
I used to take a year to write a song, and then I moved to LA, and maybe like all of my songs on my record were written in a day. Like, and some of them, the scratch vocal is still the main vocal. I feel like you can hear. I feel like good. I think my album is good, by the way. So just that's a caveat to this next statement. I think good songs you can hear. You don't have to hear the labor in it. Like, you can hear the energy. That's what you're going for. I don't know.
I mean, I don't really have anything to add to that. I totally agree. You know, but then some things are, not as easy. Certainly. As an artist, like I will spend, some things come out really quick, and other things I will spend, months kind of going back to and rehashing and then suddenly you're like, great, okay, that's now worked. But I would never do that with another artist, obviously, because I don't have time for that. I don't have the energy for that, So that would not be my process with another person in the room, to keep coming back to it. But for myself, I'll stay up all night working on like a 4-bar drum loop. And it would be hideous for anybody else to be in the room while I was doing that. So I don't let people see that side of me, but that is the truth.
Something I would say is like it's easier to work from a blueprint than from nothing. So like, maybe I changed lyrics, but you can't change something that doesn't exist. That's why I feel like good about getting stuff down on the day. Should we?
Would you, this would probably be more relevant to you, because you're a Kiwi. You spent quite a bit of time here in your band and solo and stuff, and then you went over there. What do you think about the way that New Zealand operates? Most people talk about how we're very DIY and we write one, and there's not so much of a culture of people collaborating and stuff historically. And then you suddenly move to this place where it's all just go like that. Do you have thoughts about what the direction we should try and push it in? I mean, what's going on with these SongHubs here? Wasn't there 5 years ago? You come back and go, oh, you retards, you've been backwards,
Absolutely not. No, to tell you the truth, like some of my favorite music comes out of New Zealand. Like, I just personally can't function that way. It just doesn't work for me. And I can't tell you how deeply in love I am with like the Beths. I don't know if you know the Beths. They're like New Zealand's best band. But they're, and like Coco's, like honestly, like New Zealand makes the best stuff. It really does. I just can't work that way. I'm not about telling anybody else how they should work either. So New Zealand makes the best stuff, plus can't tell anybody what to do, plus doesn't work for me. Is the answer to your question. It's totally different. But to me, I festered. Like I spent a year trying to write a song, and it was just self-flagellation the whole time, and I didn't know how to move forward, and I needed.
Like you who live here and pushing, our industry in the direction that it is over there in, say, LA. Not all the way.
Yeah. I think it would be nice if and I think it does, it's starting to exist like a little pocket of like co-writing situation. Like I know different producers, like Josh Fountain, for example, or like Jason Shushkoff, who they do conduct sessions like that. And so I think it is like burgeoning and it's cool. But I think I would never want New Zealand to turn their back on how it feels good to make things for yourself. I don't know. But I mean, I've come back here and I've done sessions with, again, like Josh Fountain or whatever, and it's been really fun. And he's come over to LA. Like, that is actually what I'd really love, is like, for like the producers that I've worked with this week, to come to LA and like have a little bit of time like bouncing around. I would love for Liz Stokes from the Beths to come and do pop writing sessions. I think she's one of the best writers I've ever heard, ever worked with. So I think, like, to be honest, like LA could benefit from like what's going on here, and it would be nice for there to be an opportunity to like bring those people and their methods over.
Do you think though that the Beths could come from anywhere other than here?
No way. Absolutely not. That's just so special.
It's been really interesting to see over the past 3 years while the SongHubs program has been running. When international guests come here, they talk a lot about how they find something quite well formed in our writers, and well formed in a way that has allowed them to kind of evolve in isolation and have a point of view, an actual distinct and unique point of view that they then offer to a collaborative writing environment. Whereas if you're growing up as a writer within a collaborative writing environment from scratch, you're always looking outwards for ideas and not necessarily inwards for ideas. And I've been quite fascinated to observe that there's kind of a beautiful thing here where our writers and our artists have a unique and independent and individual point of view, going back to what Buzz was saying about that DIY sensibility, and our fierce, I believe, fierce independence, which, as much as I think collaboration is wonderful, I also think fierce independence is wonderful. And
Totally.
something to be kind of preserved in hand and in balance.
Well, something I noticed, not to throw America under the bus, because I do love it there, but like something I noticed about the dynamic, or like how people function there, is like talk a big game and then like work up to the big game you're talking. In New Zealand, I feel like it's you have a big game and you don't talk about it. and I feel like the combo is so magical. It can be so, and that's why I think people like Leroy Clampett are thriving in America. And I don't know, I think that, especially SongHubs this week, it's like the cynicism hasn't approached the space yet here. It's like you're very good, everyone's like very good at what they do, and they also don't have there's nothing tarnished about their experience in writing rooms. Like with me, like it took me 2 years to like be super cynical about a lot of things. But like, I think that's special and like exciting. I think that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's one of my takeaways just from the few days that we've had here. It's I think I'm like really impressed and astonished at everybody's unique, individual kind of artistic persona. You know, and there's possibly, you know, you could look at each woman and say, oh, I can see similarities of you in this, but actually side by side, there's such different projects, such different, completely unique individuals. And I find that I don't come across that very often in the UK, not in the same capacity. If we were to do a writing camp with kind of UK talent, you know, you can kind of pinpoint a certain genre that a lot of the artists are kind of operating in. And I've just been astounded at just how kind of confident everybody is artistically and completely different and wide-ranging. And I think that's really, I've seen that anywhere else, which is really cool.
Yeah, everybody I've met so far seems very able and very willing to learn, and there's like an element of grit to everybody. Yeah, I find that really inspiring. I mean, like even like Beck Runga has been like there, like playing drums. I was actually, I cried when I opened the itinerary and I saw that she was the session drummer. I was like, I don't think in America you could find like someone of her caliber who is just like rolling up to play drums. Like, it's shocking. It's like, but I think that's a very New Zealand attitude. She's come in and she's been like, I want to learn a lot of things, and I don't know. I think that's really special and unique about this situation.
that there are people of really high caliber here, and that there's just zero ego anywhere. Shall we wrap it up? Closing statements. I'm just kidding.
Thanks for having us, and thank you so much to APRA and SongHubs for having us.